It's story time.
The college was old, ancient almost. Its walls had witnessed countless generations of students and professors, each leaving their mark on the hallowed halls. But as I was to discover, not all of those marks had faded with time. One day, curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to explore the oldest building on campus. It was a dark, imposing structure with a reputation for being haunted. Students whispered stories of strange sounds and unexplained events that had been reported by those who dared venture inside. As I entered, the creaking wooden floors sent a chill down my spine. The dimly lit corridors seemed to stretch endlessly, with portraits of long-forgotten faculty members staring down at me from the walls. The air was thick with the weight of history, and I couldn't help but feel like an intruder in this ancient place. I was drawn to a particular room on the third floor. The door was slightly ajar, and I pushed it open with trepidation. The room was small, and it appeared to have once been a study. Dusty books lined the shelves, and an old, ornate desk stood in the center. Suddenly, a cold breeze filled the room, extinguishing the solitary candle on the desk. I shivered, my heart racing. As I fumbled to light the candle again, I felt a presence behind me. The temperature dropped even further, and I turned to find a shadowy figure standing in the doorway. It was the apparition of a professor, dressed in old-fashioned attire, his spectacles perched on his nose. He seemed to be looking for something, shuffling through the dusty tomes on the shelves. When he realized I was watching, he turned to face me. I froze, unable to move or speak. The professor's face was etched with sadness, and he stared at me with hollow eyes. Then, with a mournful sigh, he faded away, leaving only a lingering coldness in the room. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to make sense of what I had just witnessed. The room felt charged with energy, and I couldn't help but wonder if I had encountered the ghost of the long-deceased professor. I left the room and continued my exploration of the building. It didn't take long for me to realize that the college was indeed haunted. In another hallway, I heard faint whispers, as if the walls themselves were murmuring secrets of the past. In the basement, I saw flickering lights and heard the sound of footsteps echoing in empty corridors. The college was a place where the past and the present coexisted, where the spirits of long-dead students and professors still walked the halls. It was a haunting, eerie place, but I couldn't resist the pull of its history. I continued my visits to the haunted college, drawn to the mysteries and apparitions that lurked in the shadows. Over time, I came to learn that each ghost had a story, a connection to the college that bound them to this world. Some were former students who had met tragic ends, while others were professors whose passion for teaching had never waned, even in death. One evening, I encountered an apparition in the college library. It was sitting at a long wooden table, their spectral fingers flipping through ancient volumes. I couldn't understand the words it was saying, but its voice filled with an otherworldly melancholy. As I observed it, I felt a deep sense of respect for these lost souls. They were the keepers of the college's history, the guardians of its legacy. Their presence was a reminder of the enduring power of knowledge and the bonds that tied them to this place. I continued to visit the haunted college, exploring its corridors and chambers, listening to the whispers of the past. It was a place of mystery and wonder, where the line between the living and the dead blurred. And as I walked through its halls, I couldn't help but feel a profound sense of connection to those who had come before me. The haunted college was a place where the past lived on, and I was privileged to be a part of its ongoing story. The ghosts I encountered were not to be feared but revered, for they were the embodiment of the college's enduring spirit, a testament to the power of knowledge and the timeless nature of education. As I left the college one final time, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude. I had been granted a glimpse into a world beyond our own, a world where the past and the present converged. The haunted college had left an indelible mark on my soul, and I knew that its stories would stay with me forever. My first year of college was an exciting yet nerve-wracking experience. I had moved into the old dormitory building on campus, a place with a rich history dating back to the 19th century. It was a crisp autumn evening when I returned to my dorm room after a long day of classes and socializing with new friends. I was exhausted but excited about the independence and adventure that awaited me in college. Little did I know that a different kind of adventure was about to unfold. I entered my room and set my backpack on the desk. As I was about to flop onto my bed, I noticed a flickering light out of the corner of my eye. I turned to see an antique desk lamp that I had never seen before. It wasn't the modern energy-efficient kind that the university provided. It was a classic brass lamp with intricate details and an ornate lampshade. It looked out of place in my otherwise typical and somewhat run-down dorm room. I scratched my head, wondering how it had ended up on my desk. Had someone played a prank on me? I hadn't seen it when I left in the morning, and I had no roommate to consult. Curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to turn it on. The room was instantly bathed in a warm, golden light, and I couldn't help but appreciate the vintage charm of the lamp. Then, things took an eerie turn. The lampshade started spinning slowly, and I watched in shock as it accelerated to a rapid blur. I stumbled back, my heart racing, as the room began to fill with a ghostly, flickering light. It was as if the room had become a portal to a different era. As the spinning lampshade slowed and the room returned to normal, I noticed a spectral figure in the corner of the room. She was a young woman in her early 20s, dressed in old-fashioned attire from the 19th century. Her long, dark hair cascaded around her shoulders, and her expression held an air of melancholy. She looked lost and confused, as if she had no idea where or when she was. My initial fear turned to empathy, and I cautiously approached the apparition. "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice trembling. The ghost didn't respond, but continued to stare at me with an expression of longing. "Can you hear me?" I asked, hoping for some sign of recognition. Still, no response. My curiosity and concern overwhelmed my fear. I realized that this ghostly presence was not malevolent, but lost and trapped. I decided to take a chance and asked, "What's your name?" Her voice was a whisper, barely audible. "Maggie." So I said, "Maggie, can you tell me what happened?" I inquired, hoping to understand her story. Her gaze remained distant, as if she was reliving her past. As the minutes turned to hours, Maggie's story slowly unfolded. She had been a college student, just like me, in the 1800s. She had faced academic struggles, social isolation, and profound loneliness. In her darkest moment, she had hanged herself from a beam in the dorm room, the very room that I now occupied. Her death had been a quiet and tragic secret, one that the college had buried in its history. Maggie was stuck in this realm, unable to move on, as if her unfinished business tethered her to the world of the living. She longed for the life she had lost and the experiences she had never had the chance to enjoy. Over the days and weeks that followed, Maggie and I developed an unusual connection. She was a spectral presence in my room, and though she couldn't interact with the physical world, we had many conversations. She told me about her dreams, her aspirations, and the isolation that had consumed her. I researched the history of the college, hoping to find some record of Maggie's existence. It was there that I discovered a hidden story of a female student's suicide, shrouded in shame and silence. The college had kept it a dark secret, one that had long been forgotten. With the help of a local historian, I learned more about Maggie's life and the challenges she had faced. Her story was both a reflection of the past and a reminder of the struggles that college students could endure, even in the present day. As I delved deeper into the history of the college and the lives of its students, I became increasingly committed to helping Maggie find peace. She had been trapped in a timeless limbo, unable to move on from her past suffering. Together, we embarked on a journey to uncover the truth of what had happened to her. We visited the campus archives, retraced her steps, and even held a small memorial ceremony in her honor. It was an unconventional bond between the living and the departed, a connection that transcended time and space. Over time, I noticed changes in Maggie. She began to appear more serene and less tormented by her past. The anguish that had once clouded her eyes gradually lifted, replaced by a sense of acceptance and tranquility. One day, she told me, "Thank you for giving me a second chance. I can finally move on." With those words, Maggie's presence in my life began to fade. The antique lamp that had been the conduit between our worlds disappeared as well, leaving me with only the memory of our shared experiences. I moved on with my college life, forever changed by the encounter with Maggie. The history of the college had come alive through her story, and I had played a part in giving a long-forgotten student the peace she had yearned for. My college years were filled with many memorable experiences, but one that still sends shivers down my spine was my time at Hartfield College, a place with a dark and chilling history. The campus was housed in an imposing building that had once been a hospital in the 1950s, and the echoes of that era seemed to linger in the shadowed hallways and dimly lit corridors. From the moment I set foot on the campus, I felt a heavy, oppressive presence, as if the very walls of the old building were keeping secrets from the past. The history of the hospital was well known among the students. It had been a psychiatric hospital with a dark reputation for experimental treatments and cruel practices. As if that wasn't enough to send chills down your spine, rumors swirled about the unexplained phenomena that had occurred over the years. I was assigned to live in the old South Wing dormitory, a section of the original hospital that had been converted into student housing. As I moved into my room, I couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. The bare institutional walls seemed to close in around me, and the fading marks on the floor hinted at restraints and the presence of a once-neglected patient. The room's large, barred windows and the iron radiator against one wall only added to the unsettling atmosphere. My first night in the dormitory was an unsettling experience. As I lay in my bed, I was constantly aware of the eerie silence that enveloped the entire wing. But it was when I heard whispers in the dark, faint but unmistakable voices that seemed to drift through the walls, that I realized something was not quite right. The following weeks were marked by unsettling occurrences. Lights would flicker or turn off inexplicably, despite the electrician's frequent visits to inspect the wiring. The chill that settled in the air couldn't be explained by broken heating systems. It was as if the hospital's history seeped into the present, and its patient's anguish lingered in the very air I breathed. It was during one of the late-night study sessions with my roommate, Jane, that we both heard the distinct sound of footsteps echoing down the hallway. Startled, we peeked out of our room to find no one there. In the stillness of the night, the footsteps continued, growing closer to our door. We could hear the faint rustling of clothing, like that of a hospital gown. Bracing ourselves, we opened the door to confront the intruder, but there was no one to be found. The hallway was empty, and the footsteps had vanished into thin air. That night, we barely slept, filled with an unshakable sense of dread. As the weeks passed, more strange incidents occurred. Our belongings would be moved, objects would fall inexplicably, and on one particularly eerie night, Jane awoke to find a figure standing at the end of her bed, a patient from the past, still bound in a straitjacket, staring at her with hollow eye. When she screamed, the figure disappeared, leaving us both terrified. The stories of other students' experiences were equally chilling. Doors would slam shut by themselves, and ghostly apparitions would appear at the foot of their beds, dressed in the uniforms of the hospital's nurses and doctors. Sometimes the ghostly patients would whisper tormented pleas or incomprehensible words, their voices filled with anguish. Despite our growing fear, we decided to explore the hospital's abandoned sections one night, eager to uncover the source of these hauntings. Armed with flashlights and our shared bravery, we ventured into the eerie darkness. The abandoned hospital wing was a stark contrast to the well-maintained areas we were accustomed to. Broken windows, peeling wallpaper, and shattered glass littered the floors. We couldn't shake the feeling that we were trespassing in a place where the past still held sway. As we delved deeper into the maze-like wing, we stumbled upon an old room with a rusted sign that read "Morgue." The chill that gripped me was unlike any I had felt before, and the oppressive aura of the room seemed to constrict around us. Jane's flashlight began to flicker, casting eerie, elongated shadows on the walls. We had barely time to register our fear when we heard the mournful wailing of the hospital's ghostly inhabitants. Their voices filled the air, crying out in agony, their presence felt but unseen. The combined voices seemed to rise from the very floor beneath our feet, as if the spirits of the past were reaching out from the cold, unforgiving tiles. In the midst of this terrifying symphony, the room's temperature plummeted, and we could see our breath in the frigid air. The word "leave" appeared before us, etched in the condensation on the room's glass window, as if a desperate, unseen hand had left its mark. We fled the morgue in a panic, our fear turning into a frenzied escape from the haunting presence. In our haste, we barely noticed the strange symbols that had been etched into the door's aged wood. It was as if the hospital's tormented spirits had left a message, a warning, or perhaps a plea. We reported our harrowing experiences to the college administration, who were well aware of the building's dark history, but had done little to address the haunting. Instead, they assured us that there was nothing to fear, attributing the occurrences to our active imaginations or the building's antiquated infrastructure. In our search for answers, Jane and I delved into the history of the hospital. We uncovered stories of the hospital's director, Dr. Evelyn Hargrove, who had been accused of inhumane experimental procedures and of covering up patient deaths. The hospital had gained a notorious reputation, and Dr. Hargrove had mysteriously disappeared before any investigations could be made. As time passed, we grew accustomed to the strange occurrences, resigning ourselves to our ghostly companions. We came to refer to them as the lost souls, the patients who had suffered and died in the hospital's dark past. The lost souls continued to make their presence known, but it seemed their actions were no longer meant to frighten us. It was as though they simply wanted to be acknowledged, to have their suffering recognized.